Hi, my name is Liam McCormack, and I was born and raised in the beautiful city of Gainesville, Virginia. I'm the only child of my parents, Matt and Mary Ann McCormack, who were also born and raised in the Northern Virginia area. My mom grew up in New Baltimore, Virginia, and my dad grew up in Warrenton, Virginia, both places approximately a half-hour drive away from where we currently live. My dad comes from a family of 10 children, 5 boys and 5 girls. The oldest, my Aunt Ann, was born in the year 1952, and the youngest, my dad, was born in the year 1965. Now, in Joseph Epstein's essay Kindergarten, Every Child a Dolphin, Epstein states that him and his brother were never for a moment at the center of their parents' lives, and that the action of their parents' lives was typically elsewhere than in child raising. From all the stories my dad has told me from his childhood, it appears that his parents were quite similar to Epstein's when it came to raising children. My grandparents rarely ever provided my dad with much supervision at all. My dad's told me countless stories of him as a young child leaving his house early in the morning, meeting up with the other kids in the area, and playing all sorts of different games in the nearby woods until eventually being called back home at sunset for dinner. As my dad grew older though, and after all his siblings had up and moved out of the house, the little level of central focus that his parents had given him lessened even more. When my dad was in 11th grade, him and his parents moved out to the city of Chicago, Illinois, because his father had been relocated there for work. My dad hated it. He's told me many times how much he disliked the people, the places, and just the overall atmosphere there. Now, even though they had moved and now lived in Chicago, my grandparents still owned their original house in Warrenton because my grandfather was only temporarily relocated to Chicago and would have to return to work in Virginia after only a few years. Since my dad severely missed his old life, right after he finished 11th grade, he pleaded for his parents to let him return to the house in Warrenton so he can complete his senior year of high school with all his lifelong friends back home. It didn't take much to convince his parents, and so my dad flew back to Virginia and spent his senior year of high school living in his childhood home by himself. Now, as you can probably imagine, an 18-year-old, especially one who's already had low levels of supervision his whole life, having an entire house to himself during his final year of high school could end up being quite hectic. Although my dad doesn't always like to talk about the party side of his young adult life, through many slipped details, it's been easy for me to figure out that much of his senior year of high school was spent having fun and partying with his friends. Just like my dad, my mom also grew up as the youngest sibling. Quite unlike him though, she only has 4 siblings, all of which are brothers. Unfortunately, I don't have nearly as much information on the childhood of my mom as I do for my dad. All throughout my mom's childhood and young adult life, she was a very shy and insecure person. Because of this, she often tends to refrain from talking about that part of her past. After years of questioning her though, and even occasionally her brothers, I've received at least a few important details. Like my dad's and Epstein's parents, my mom's parents also never made her or her brothers the prime focus of their lives. This was extremely prevalent when it came to my mom's schooling life. Her parents never at all concerned themselves with how my mom was doing in school or what kind of activities and classes she was taking part in. I've also learned that my mom's parents tended to not be very involved in her emotional state either. She's actually told me several times that she rarely ever felt like she could go to her parents and talk to them about personal, emotional issues. Although my grandparents seemed to be quite distant from the lives of their children, this was not the case at all with my parents. For as long as I can remember, my mom and dad have consistently been the biggest supporters in my life. This probably doesn't seem very surprising though, since nowadays parents all over seem to be deeply invested in the lives of their children. In his essay A Son at Tufts, A Daughter at Taft, Epstein explains this recent increase in involvement by stating that in today's society, a lot is riding, not only for the child, but for the parent, on how he or she turns out. Epstein is actually extremely critical of the modern parent in this essay. He seems to be generalizing all parents and saying that nowadays parents only want to push and support their child to make themselves look better. This view bothers me quite a bit though. Back when I was in the 3rd grade, it had become quite visible to my parents that I was probably never going to get truly involved in sports. So, because they didn't want me just sitting around watching TV, they decided to push me into learning a musical instrument instead. They let me choose what I wanted to learn to play, so I chose the drums. They immediately supported my decision. They started paying for me to take drum lessons from a man named Brad Davis at a local music and arts center every Saturday at 10:30 in the morning, and even got me a full drum set to practice on. Then, as I grew older and entered middle school, my parents convinced me to try out for the percussion section in my school's band. I fell in love with the school band right away and ended up doing it all the way until I graduated high school. Throughout all those years of playing in the school band, I don't think I can recall a single concert where at least one of them didn't show up. Unlike how Epstein says he would have been embarrassed if his parents showed up to events like this when he was young, it always made me so happy to see them sitting in the audience. It wasn't just school band concerts though. My freshman year of high school, I tried out for my school's drumline and made it. This meant that I would be traveling to other high schools around the state competing in marching band competitions every Saturday for the first couple months of the school year. Some of the schools we traveled to were even over a 2-hour drive away from my house. Still though, my parents never missed a single one of my competitions in the entire 4 years I was a part of the drumline. None of this support ever seemed remotely selfish either. There was never a doubt in my mind that they had my back not because they wanted to brag about me, so to speak, but because they truly wanted to see me be my best self. All the support that my parents have always had for me has had such a large positive impact on my life, probably way more than they'll ever know. Also, much unlike how Epstein says his parents treated him as a child, my parents constantly told me how much they loved me and were always doing things to let me know how much they cared. Epstein states in Kindergarten that he tended to often act this way with his sons too, but that he later on regretted it because he felt as though his sons probably started to doubt that his love for them was truly meaningful. I never felt this way about my parents though. It was quite the opposite actually. Because of the constant showing of love and affection throughout my life, there has never been a single doubt in my mind that my parents' love for me is truly unconditional and that all they really want to do is see me succeed and be happy. And honestly, that's the best feeling in the world, knowing that there's always somebody out there who truly loves you for you.